Chapter 1655. Yan Xiaoyi immediately activated the power of her profound jade heart. Releasing all of her profound energy, she opened up a protective barrier. Ha! A mere earth profound practitioner dares to block this sacred technique. Wolf Saint Technique sneered disdainfully, not putting Yan Xiaoyi's protective barrier in his eyes. The movements of his hands didn't stop at all. Thick profound energy, swift and fierce attacks. Xiaoyi. A panicked voice reverberated through the earth. Immediately, a figure was seen, rushing over. Following that figure's sprint, the surrounding air, suddenly, like flowing water, appeared with faint
Chapter
waves.
1662.
Layer upon layer,
Pharaoh
slowly
he had
specially
higher.
emphasized the words,
Just as
15
Wolf
years
Saint
old.
Technique's attack
Wolf
fell.
Saint Magic's face
Boom.
darkened. His
That
5
turbulent
fingers
air,
clenched the
in a
armrest
split
of the wooden
second,
wheelchair,
turned into a
leaving
huge
a long
wave,
mark, surging high up.
Pharaoh
You're
the
wrong.
violent
profound energy
Yi Qing
revealed a
Qian couldn't
terrifying
bear to
power
see
that
her
made
lover
one's
get
heart
angry.
tremble. So she caressed Wolf Saint Magic's chest and
With a
raised her
scream,
beautiful
Wolf
eyes to
Saint
look at
Technique
Pharaoh.
spat
out a mouthful of
blood.
The moment she opened her mouth,
His body,
Pharaoh
under
he
that
stared
wave
at
of
her in
air,
disgust,
flew
backwards,
backwards,
Who do you think you are?
landing
heavily on the ground.
Just
a slut who relies
Wolf
on
Saint
spreading her
Technique
legs to
rolled a
climb
few
up times on the ground.
This
Pharaoh
Pharaoh
and Saint
crashing
Magic
into
are
a huge
talking.
rock.
Do you have the right to
The
interrupt?
wound
on his back that hadn't
Saying
healed
that,
yet. He glanced at
and
Wolf
a new
Saint
injury.
Magic scornfully. You've been
Fresh
in the dark
blood
forces
instantly
for such a long
dyed the
time,
ground under
yet you
Wolf
still
Saint
don't know the
Technique.
dark forces rules.
But at
this moment, no
this
one
Pharaoh
paid
wants
attention
to see
the
how
direction
long you
of
can
Wolf
protect
Saint
her.
Technique. Yi Qing
Everyone's
Qian pursed her
gaze
red
was
lips
focused
as she
on the
lowered
devil
her head
class
with reddened
students.
eyes. In front of the
Wolf
devil
Saint
class
Magic
students,
frowned and
a
reached
youth
out to
dressed
hold
in
Yi
a
Qing
green and
Qian's
white
hand.
uniform,
He trashed.
tightly hugging
Do you
a
only
slender
know
girl.
how to shoot at women now?
Both arms
Enough.
tightly wrapped around her waist.
Both of you, shut up.
That muscular body,
The beautiful
slightly
lady
sitting in the
trembled.
corner, stood up irritably.
His entire
quarreling
body
over
was
and over
emitting a
again.
terrifying
Just a few
aura.
words. Is there
Who
any
was
meaning
that?
in quarreling? Students from the devil class.
The
The
students
students
of
of
the
the
various
various
academies
academies
talk anymore.
were filled with curiosity.
Pharaoh he immediately
and
came
Yan
forward
Xiaoyi,
attentively,
who was tightly hugged.
Butterfly
At this
Saint
moment,
Magic glanced
stiffened
coldly
on
at
the
Pharaoh.
spot. Then looked at
Her
Wolf
body
Saint
tensed
Magic.
up.
His lordship's
Her
seal is
breathing
only lacking the
suddenly
last
stopped.
2 hurdles before the seal
Between
can
her
be
nose
completely lifted.
lingered that familiar scent that
Speaking
made
of
her
his
about to
lordship,
cry.
the flames
Xiao
between
Jin.
Wolf Saint Magic and
It's
Pharaoh
Xiao
he were
Jin.
restrained. He's back. This time the plan to
Back
absorb
to
a
her
large
side.
number of souls has failed.
Both hands,
the day of his lordship's
subconsciously
lifting will
wrapped
be
around
delayed
his
for a
waist.
period of time. Bit by bit, Butterfly
tightened.
Saint Magic's words made
Until
the room fall into
her body
silence, completely rubbed into
This
his
failure
embrace.
was
not only about not being
you
able to
stupid?
obtain a large number of
Whenever
souls.
I'm
not by your side, it had
you
also
do stupid
completely
things.
exposed the dark forces
However,
motive in Nirvana
this
tenderness
realm.
did not last for long.
Nirvana
realm would also raise
Yan
their
Xiaoyi
vigilance
heard
and
the
think of
man's
ways to
angry
resist the
voice.
dark forces attack. Xiao Jin pried
It
Yan
would not be as
Xiaoyi's
easy
body
as
as
before
for them
his
to
eyes
obtain a
filled with
large
rage
number
as
of
he
clean
glared at her
souls of young
fiercely.
cultivators.
Who do you
think you are? No matter which
An
one of you wants to
impregnable
get away,
voice
will
entered Yi
push the
Qing
blame to
Luo's
You're
ears.
only at the
When
Earth's
his lordship
profound realm,
regains
and you want to
consciousness,
use your own
instantly
body to
will
fight
all
the
accept
Wolf
his
Saint
lordship
Technique. A
head
trace
on.
of astonishment
The
flashed
more
over Butterfly
her
Saint
eyes, the more
Technique looked
furious
at his
his
She
voice
focused her
became.
gaze and looked
So,
through the
the
gap
slender
between
fingers
fingers
on
on
Yan
Yan Xiaoyi's
Xiaoyi's
blade
blade
gradually
shoulder.
increased their strength.
Sure enough,
he nodded
beside
beside
the
the
Saint
Saint
Butterfly
furrowed her
Technique
brows in
sat a
pain,
man in
and
a
anyone
brown
could
robe
tell that
wrapped
he was
with
interested
gold.
in the sacred
The
butterfly
man's
technique
face
also
was
caught
like
Yan
Yan
and the
Xiaoyi's
corners of his
consciousness
mouth gradually
lowered
began
his
to
head
climb.
and
Did not
smile.
refute.
He
He looked
rebuked.
very
He did
much
not
like a
refute.
graceful
She
young man
meant it
that he
all.
agreed with the butterfly
That he
Saint
felt
face.
that it
was extremely ridiculous.
Instead of debating whether it's right or
Yan
wrong,
Xiaoyi's
why
heart,
don't we
which
carefully
she glanced
think
young
about the
master
cause
in
of
Xiao
Xiao
Jin's
Lan.
return.
Think clearly
Yan
about why the
Xiaoyi's
soul is
calmed
beyond
down
saying.
formation
Calmed
failed.
down.
It was actually him.
Xiao Jin
did not
a clear
return
voice
his
inside.
eyes as gentle as the wind
Xiao
resounded in the
Jin
dark
did
forces.
not
belong to her. He got close to
Closing
Yan
her
Xiaoyi.
eyes,
Indeed,
the expression on Yan
Xiaoyi's face had already
Earlier in the
recovered its
room where she
usual
was
calmness.
locked up,
The fifth person
whether
that
I'm
she sensed
stupid
was
or
Shi
not,
Shanglan.
and
what I want to do has
What
nothing to
was
do
the
with
relationship
between him and the
She
dark
looked
forces.
up and met
Xiao Jin's eyes.
Chapter
Maybe the timing of his appearance
1663.
was too coincidental.
Young master, she is
Or
right.
maybe the current backlight was
Rather
too
than arguing
coincidental.
about right or wrong,
Why don't we
Jin's
find out the reason
unprepossessing
why our
face
plan failed?
was
reflected in Yan Xiaoyi's
The anger on
pupils.
Butterfly
Saint Mage's
He
face
actually
was
appeared to
immediately
be
replaced
extremely
by a
tall
smile.
and
handsome. Her eyes
That
were
deep
filled with
contour
affection as she
faintly
looked at
revealed
Shi
a
Shanglan
suffocating
coquettishly.
handsomeness.
But
Shi
Shi Shanglan
Shanglan
didn't show any signs of being moved by her goodwill.
Chapter
1656. Shi Shanglan's face was
After a
still gentle
while,
like water.
Yan
Xiaoyi retracted
the
the
smile on his
absent-mindedness
lips
was
in her
distant
eyes.
but not impolite. She despised
Pharaoh,
herself, and
his
her
face
heart
sunk slightly and revealed
even at
some
this
displeasure.
moment, she still had feelings,
But he didn't
for
flare
Xiao
up like
Jin.
how he did with Wolf Saint
Obviously,
Mage.
that face
Instead,
totally did
he
not
suppressed
fit her
his anger
aesthetic
and echoed
standards.
Qi Shanglan's words.
Obviously,
Young master,
she had
Xi's
already
words are
decided
reasonable.
from the bottom of her heart not
I can't
to have
be
feelings
bothered
for
to
him.
argue with that old man.
But the moment she saw
This
Xiao
scene made
Jin,
Yi Qing Luo, who was
her
hiding in
heart
the
that had
corner
been
to
quiet for a
eavesdrop,
long
felt
time
slightly surprised.
messed up.
Weren't the
Completely
dark
messed
forces
up.
divided into two factions?
Ever since that day, when
the
Xiao
Lord,
Jin
who was
saw
also
Xi
the king of
Shanglan's
darkness,
investigation
was the
information.
leader.
Then
was
there was the
alone,
guardian
as
and
though
elder
he had
factions.
vanished from the face of the earth.
Above the guardian and elder
left
factions
just like
were the
that.
Saint Mage and Pharaoh.
Had he ever thought about her
Yi
feelings?
Qing Luo could see clearly
Had
how
he ever
arrogant
thought
Pharaoh
about the
he was
feelings
in
of
the
the
dark
students in
forces.
Devil class?
It could be said
Even
that
in the
Pharaoh
flaming
he was
lair,
second only
such
to
a
one and
dangerous
above
place.
everyone else in the dark forces.
He had never appeared.
His attitude
Until
towards Xi
now,
Shanglan
when he finally
was
appeared
obviously
here.
respectful. So,
Sorry,
Pharaoh he admired
Xiao Jin
Butterfly
looked at
Saint
that
Mage.
pair of calm, beautiful eyes,
And Butterfly
and a dull
Saint
pain
Mage gave
surged
such
from
an
the bottom of
obvious,
his heart.
suggestive look to Xi
His
Shanglan.
reprimanding expression, the anger
Pharaoh
in his
he was
eyes,
actually indifferent.
suddenly disappeared.
It showed that
His
Pharaoh
hands
he didn't
froze.
dare to become enemies with
He
Xi
quickly let
Shanglan.
go of Yan Xiaoyi's
What was Xi
waist.
Shanglan's identity?
Then,
He took a
even
few steps
Pharaoh,
back,
he was afraid of
widening
him.
the distance between
The
them.
atmosphere in the house
When
eased up a
Xiao
lot
Jin's
because of Xi
apology fell into
Shanglan's
Yan
words.
Xiaoyi's ears.
It was like a
Saint Mage
sharp
remained
needle,
silent for a
fiercely
long
stabbing
time
into
before
her
he
heart.
spoke. Speaking
He
of the
couldn't
reason
wait
why
to
we
leave her
failed,
side,
it
not
made me
daring
think
to
of
have any
something.
contact with her.
His sinister eyes
It was more
looked
like
at Pharaoh.
he was mocking
He
her feelings for him,
Trash
mocking
he.
that
Do
she
you
hadn't
still remember
fallen for
what you
him.
swore when you set up the
She was
soul
really a
assimilation
fool.
array? A
Old
complete
wolf,
and utter
do you
fool.
still want to quarrel with me?
This man, he had
Pharaoh,
never
his
loved you
face
from the
turned
start.
cold as he
Why
stared
bother?
back at Wolf Saint Mage
Really?
angrily.
Why did you have to do this?
The Wolf Xingfa looked at him
Closing
and said
her
indifferently,
eyes,
"You
she
said that
forced
once
the
the
tears
soul
that welled up
assimilating
in her
array
eyes
is set
down.
up, no one in the
Yan
Nirvana realm can
Xiaoyi's
destroy
breathing
the
gradually
formation
calmed
eye of the
down.
soul assimilating array."
Following that,
so our people
she
don't
opened
need to
her eyes
specially
again,
guard the formation
her gaze
eye.
calm.
Why are you here?
Otherwise, the
A
location
large
of the
number
formation
of people
I
from
will
the
be
dark
exposed.
forces are already rushing towards this direction.
CK.
I followed the Overlord
Wolf
here.
trash.
Xiao Jin
Do you have
clenched
to
his
F
fist,
King
trying
go
his
against
best
me?
to make his voice sound
Come
calm.
on. He
I'll
couldn't show a
accompany
little.
you. His
Pharaoh
heart
he
ached
rushed
because
toward
of
the
Yan
Wolf
Xiaoyi's
Saint law
coldness.
furiously.
Yan
Xiaoyi's
Xiaoyi's
alienation
stop right
towards
now.
him.
The
Wasn't this
butterfly
the result
sacred
he
technique
wanted?
reached out and grabbed
He took
Pharaoh
a deep
Crane's
breath
collar,
softly,
forcefully
let's leave the
pulling him
flame
into
lair
the chair.
first.
You
Not
are not
only this
allowed to
place,
speak without
there
my
are arrays
permission.
set up.
The entire
Pharaoh
flaming lair
Crane's
has
face
signs
turned
of
red.
arrays. But looking at the
soon.
serious expression on the
Yan
butterfly
Xiaoyi's
Saint
eyes
technique's
lit up.
face, he could not help
Now
but
was
shut
not
his
the time
mouth.
to worry about love affairs.
The butterfly's sacred technique
Yi
looked at the
Qing
wolf's
Luo had
sacred
yet to
technique.
regain her senses.
He is right.
The Overlord was here and he would definitely
The
be able to
soul
awaken
assimilating
Yi
array
Qing
is an
Luo.
ancient dark secret
Yan
technique,
Xiaoyi
a sinister
raised her
technique
hand
that
and
is not
pushed Xiao
tolerated
Jin
by the
away.
heavenly Tao. His gaze
In a
swept
lower
across
realm
the
like the
surroundings.
Nirvana realm,
No one would
sure
know
enough,
the method to
they
destroy
saw a
the
man
array.
in shimmering purple clothes.
She pondered
who
for
looked
a
like a
moment,
banished
and a
immortal,
cold glint
walking
appeared in
over
her
quickly.
beautiful eyes.
DMO
Even if
Xian
we
was
find the
extremely
eye of the
fast.
formation, no one knows
Without
how
any
to destroy
pause,
it. He headed straight
what
towards
Wolf
Yi
Saint
Qing Luo's
technique means
direction.
is.
But
There
before
are
he was
people
able to
from the
stretch
lower
out his
realm,
hand and pull Yi Qing
helping
Luo
Yi
into his
Qing Luo.
embrace,
When
he met
Shanglan
with Yi
could tell
Qing
what
Luo's
Wolf
chilly
Saint
technique
eyes,
was implying.
his footsteps slowly came
As
to a
soon as
halt.
these words came out,
He and Yi Qing
the
Luo
four
stood
of them
face to
exchanged
face,
glances, and their faces
Their eyes
instantly
met.
turned pale. No one spoke.
Indeed.
Master
If there were no
Dizun,
people from the lower realm helping
Qing
Yi
Luo
Qing
has
Luo,
lost her senses and only
how
you
would
can
Yi
wake her
Qing
up.
Luo know how to use the
Yan
blood of the
Xiaoyi
caster to
said
extinguish the
anxiously.
array eye?
The following words
If it wasn't
were
for the
stuck in his
fact that the
throat.
people from the lower realm
She
had
saw
told
that
Yi
behind
Qing Luo the
DMO
method to
Xian,
destroy the
there
array.
was a jade green figure following
How was it
closely
possible
behind.
for Yi Qing Luo to destroy
Wind
this array
chimes.
so easily?
Feng Ling was actually following beside DMO
Chapter
Xian.
1664.
Recalling that not long ago,
Xi
this
Shanglan's
Feng Ling
expression
brought along
instantly
the
turned
Imperial
grave.
Palace's granny to kill
His
Yi
handsome
Qing Luo.
brows frowned slightly.
Yan
If there's no one
Xiaoyi
from
was
the lower
extremely
realm to
hostile
teach her,
towards Feng
she
Ling.
shouldn't be
The
able to find the
enchantment here.
location
Only
of the array
Feng Ling
eye.
can break it. He paused for a
DMO
moment as his
Xian's gaze
gentle
was
eyes
still on Yi
swept
Qing
past the
Luo.
few people in the room.
Yan Xiaoyi
That
blinked.
gaze was as gentle as
The
the wind.
Overlord
Lord was explaining to her.
However, the few of them felt an extremely cold
Chapter
glint in their eyes.
1657.
That kind
Hearing
of chill
that
that
extremely
emanated
calm
from the
explanation,
Yi
Zichen's
it made
eyes
the few of them
widened.
feel a thump in their
Yi
hearts.
Qing Luo's eyelashes
Wolf
trembled
St. Law's
slightly.
concerns, I will
The cold
personally
glint in her
investigate
eyes
clearly.
wavered for a moment.
If there's really
By
someone
her
from the
ears,
lower realm around
DMO
Xian's
Luo,
explanation
I
seemed to be
will
reverberating.
return to the island and invite father
He
to leave
directly
the
called
island.
Feng Ling by her name.
Upon hearing
It wasn't like
words,
before, calling her
their
Xiao
faces
Ling instantly
intimately.
revealed a joyous expression.
Was it because
with young master
the reason
Shi's
why
help,
the imperial
this matter will
palace's
definitely
granny
be
wanted to
settled
kill
very
her?
quickly. This sweet
Butterfly
throbbing
Saint
didn't last for too
Law's eyes
long.
were filled with affection and
Yi
admiration.
Qing Luo's heart suddenly thumped.
Pharaoh, he looked at Butterfly Saint Law's
Xianhe.
expression and shifted his
Why was
gaze
he
away
here?
unhappily. He was here.
He clenched his fists
Would
and
he
eased
stop
the
her
tense
plan?
expression on his face as he
Ah,
gave a
Xian
flattering
definitely
smile.
wouldn't bear
yes,
for her to take the
yes,
risk.
Yes, young
If he
master
knew
Shi
her
is willing to
decision,
help.
he would
Next
definitely
time,
stop
our
her.
plan will definitely succeed.
No.
Butterfly
No way.
Saint Law
She
snorted
couldn't let
lightly as her
Xian see
tone
her
couldn't conceal her
abnormality.
disgust.
Yi Qing
Overlord,
Luo, that
those
little
unimportant
slut,
people
the
are
speed
not
of her
important.
advancement is so fast.
What's important
It must be
is
because of the person behind
Yan
her.
Xiaoyi's vision returned
As long
to
as we
Yi
get
Qing
rid of
Luo,
that person,
the dark forces
what kind
said
of
that
waves
Qing
can that
Luo had
little
already
slut
been
create?
controlled by the dark forces.
The few of them complemented
If
again.
we don't wake her up,
Yi Qing Luo,
we won't
who
be
was
able to
squatting at the
control
corner,
her.
frowned tightly.
Hearing Yan Xiaoyi's anxious
Lan
words,
addressed himself as young
Yi
master
Qing Luo
earlier.
had a feeling of
What?
King that husky.
Young master was
She
referring
wanted to
cry, but no tears
The reason
came
why
out.
these few dark forces
She
leaders
knew
were
that
so
Yan
respectful
Xiaoyi
towards
was worried
Shi
about
Shanlan.
her.
It was
Worried from the
probably
bottom
because
of
of the
her
father
bones.
behind Shi Shanlan.
But
What
could
would
she not let
Shanlan's
DMO
identity?
Xian put his attention on her
Just
at
as
this
Yi Qing
moment?
Luo was deep in
She
thought.
couldn't let go of such a
In
good
the room,
opportunity.
Yi Qing Jian, who had been
Just at this
silent all
moment,
this while
Gu
opened her
Wu,
mouth softly,
Zhou Mo,
what if
and 100
the
over
person
elders
behind
from the
Yi
main
Qing
academy
Luo
rushed
is
over.
DMO Xian?
Seeing the bloody
The few
scene
people's
and the
compliments
various
stopped
academy
abruptly.
students covered in blood,
Several
they all
pairs
had a
of
fright.
eyes turned towards Yi Qing
Momentarily,
Jian in unison.
the entire blazing flame
Wolf
nest
Saint Law
fell into
also
chaos.
glanced sideways at Yi Qing
This was the
Jian, who was
chance.
standing beside him as he
Yi
frowned,
Qing Luo
as
clenched
though he
her
was
fists
annoyed with her
tightly
for
as she took
opening
a
her
deep
mouth.
look at DMO Xian's
Yi Qing
direction.
Jian faced their gazes
Suddenly,
and her
she
expression
turned
remained
around and
unchanged.
That
Her
slender
red lips
figure
curled
swiftly
upwards
merged
as a
into
smile
the air
curled up
and
as she
disappeared.
spoke in a warm voice.
Devil
Rumor
classes
has it that Yi
students
Qing
chased up to
Luo
her.
and DMO
Madam
Xian
Xian
from the
Luo.
Imperial Palace have an
You won't be
intimate
able to catch
relationship.
up. Stay here and
This
cooperate
point,
with the
I have
main
indeed
academy's
witnessed it with my
investigation.
own eyes.
DMO
After a
Xian's long
pause,
peach
she was
blossom eyes
satisfied to
squinted
see the deep
slightly.
meaning in everyone's
A
eyes.
chilly intent flashed in his
She
eyes.
then continued,
I'll go.
Originally, my fourth
His words
sister
had
had
just
already
ended
dug
when his
away
sleeve was
Yi Qing
tugged by
Luo's
someone.
profound heart jade,
Feng Ling's
completely
timid
turning
face
her into a
appeared in
waste.
his eyes.
But
Brother
unfortunately,
D,
on the day that her profound heart jade
her
was
words
dug
had
out,
yet to leave
she
her
turned
mouth.
from a waste into a cultivator.
DMO Xian had already flung Feng Ling's
Not
hand
only
away
did she
in
force me
extreme
to
disgust,
retreat, even that father of
there
mine,
was a cold glint in his
sex
eyes.
patriarch, was it Yi
Feng
Qing
Ling,
Luo's opponent?
there are many things that I don't say.
Later on,
but it
I
doesn't
asked
mean that I don't
Yuchiya
know
about what happened that day.
Your aura is on the dark
What's the
forces
matter?
barrier. Butterfly
You were
Saint
the one who
technique
set it
couldn't
up.
stand Yi Qing Qian's
Windling's
purposely keeping
face
them in
turned
suspense
pale.
as she urged. Her delicate body
Yi Qing
trembled
Qian
slightly.
paused after each word.
Beiyuan.
That day,
Yi
Yi
Qing
Qing
Luo's
Luo's profound
voice
heart
was
jade
tense
was
and
dug
cold.
out and she was forced to drink
A black
strong
figure
medicinal
appeared
soup.
from the darkness. In the process of
Tang
rebelling
Beiyuan
against
stood
Yuchiya,
respectfully
she
beside
seized
DMO
Xian.
Bring
Take
Feng Ling
DMO
back to the
Xian
Imperial
hostage.
Palace and guard her
How
strictly.
could this be?
Without
In
my
this
orders,
world,
no one
only
is
their
allowed
lord
to get
had
close
this
to her.
ability.
Who could
DMO
hold
Xian
DMO
said
Xian
coldly.
hostage?
After a pause, his gaze turned slightly cold.
Chapter 1665.
Including Grandma. Shi Shanlan
Yes.
pondered for a moment, then
Tang
slowly
Beiyuan's
nodded.
expression was cold and
He
stern.
recalled that after the interclass
Once he said that
competition
one
in the
word,
Heavenly
he
Academy,
suddenly brought
when
out a
Yi Qing
chain
Luo
from his
came to the
sleeves,
Shi
and
family's
without
courtyard,
another word,
there was
he
a man
bound
who
Feng
followed
Ling
beside
tightly.
her.
A
Those
man
were
with a
profound
strong
ice
sense of
shackles.
presence.
It was a
He-
chain made of
it should be
indestructible
DMO
ice.
Xian.
There was no
Other
way
than
to
DMO
untie this
Xian,
chain at all.
no one else had such a strong
Feng
aura.
Ling immediately panicked.
If that person was really DMO
With a sobbing
Xian,
tone, she shouted
In
pitifully,
addition, the
Brother
Imperial
D,
Palace
but
had been
Tang
attacking the
Beiyuan
dark
didn't give
forces
Feng
during
Ling
this
a chance
period
to
of
continue
time.
speaking. Yi Qing
Holding
Qian's
the end of the
words,
chain,
90%,
she hung Feng Ling and flew
were
out of the
right.
blazing flame nest.
Everyone could see that.
How much
Chapter
did DMO
1658.
Xian care about Yi Qing Luo?
Yi Qing Luo's speed was
I will
extremely
return to the
fast.
island first to investigate
In
this
just
matter.
a moment, she was already
Shi
at least
Shanlan's
1,000 meters
expression
away
was
from
sullen.
that area. He stood up
She
and cupped
concealed
his
her
fists
presence
at the
and
few
stopped
people.
in her tracks.
The few
of them immediately stood up and sent Xian would definitely chase up to her. She had to get Pharaoh to bring her to the dark forces main camp before the room where she was locked up in the moment she Shanglong her guess was indeed right. The sound of footsteps could be heard outside the door. Technique had just used the dark curse to escape from the footsteps gradually faded away. But they didn't go far. They should have sent him out of the crane palace. Technique's coincidental appearance. Soon after, the footsteps of a few people gradually approached. She pretended to be controlled by the profound against the side of the bed and continued to pretend to be asleep. She intentionally made a move on the devil classes students. He could clearly hear a few people grumbling outside the door. It was to let Pharaoh, who was hiding in the dark, know that she was indeed controlled by the power to bully others. Earlier, after grumbling for a while, the few of them passed by the room where probably Luo was locked up. If she wasn't affected by the profound suddenly paused. Although the mission this time has failed, let Wolf this Pharaoh has brought back devil classes students. This profound heart Jade's vessel. If she stopped it, Pharaoh I believe that it can also remove the Lord to bring Wolf seal technique away. Wolf Saint technique scoffed lightly, and Gue even if we rushed over in time. Luo's vessel physique before she made a profound energy to the Overlord God technique's attack, but to remove the seal, this was considered as a young and clean young man's spirit. As long as the Lord mastered God's profound she carefully sensed the movements he can temporarily wake up. She remembered, when the time comes, we will naturally listen to our Lord's arrangements to bring proceed with the next step away was this direction. Pharaoh he glanced at him coldly. Saint technique was sent flying by Qiao Jin. He took that opportunity to escape in this direction. Can make up for my mistakes. You feel unbalanced. The people from the dark forces. We're all working for the Lord. We're definitely here. What's the difference between you and me? Two pairs of eyes were staring unblinkingly at Qing Luo, couldn't take it anymore and interrupted their argument. Wolf Saint Technique's face was extremely pale due to excessive blood loss. If we can make the Lord God awake for a short while, we'll be able to get instructions for our future actions. She is really controlled by and received the sacred butterfly technique's praise. Pharaoh he shot a disdainful glance at Wolf Saint technique. Dai also thinks that my method is good. The secret technique which I used was personally imparted by his lordship. That slut to the dark sacred region no possibility of any accident. As he spoke, Pharaoh Crane's pushed open the tightly shut still destroyed. Wolf Saint's technique snorted in disdain. Pharaoh he's face sunk. This Pharaoh will make you convinced. She heard that Pharaoh Crane's gathered his mental power and formed a hand seal as she could also smell the auras of those people who were already one obscure curse after another. Yiqing Luo calmed her breathing. The minute felt a hand's mental energy appeared, Yiqing Luo acutely sensed the fluctuation in the air. Came from the door again. Her expression instantly turned solemn. The darkness sanctuary is the place where his lordship is sealed. Just as he was thinking of following the ripples in the air to search for Pharaoh to bring her there. Old man Song's voice immediately sounded in her mind. Lass. Pharaoh he was clearly is testing you. Yiqing Luo's profound jade heart had already been completely contaminated by the profound her counter-detection of Pharaoh he's under his secret technique. There was no way for her to regain be a bit crazier. The wolf man had repeatedly doubted if Yiqing Luo was really controlled by was extremely quick. Wasn't this questioning his ability in the dark and wanted to use a secret technique to test if her profound heart jade had really been contaminated by the profounding chi. Pharaoh he swiftly conjured a hand stopped seal. In her tracks. One by one, his entire body suddenly released an extremely strong murderous aura. Oh no! A pair of murderous eyes was fiercely swept across the surroundings. She wasn't under Pharaoh's control. She raised her hands, clenched fists, how would she know what order Pharaoh he had given her? It seemed extremely crazy. Luo immediately called out to Old Man Song in her heart. I want to kill him. Lass, kill all of you. Kill all of you. Get up and kill Wolf Saint Luo was like a headless fly. Old Man Song's reminder rang in her mind. Pharaoh he who was in the dark saw Yiqing Luo's crazy performance and glanced at Wolf Saint technique complacently. Her figure suddenly moved and sprinted towards Wolf Saint technique's direction. Wolf Saint technique pursed his lips and her palm chi was like a rainbow. Chapter 1659. Wolf Saint technique's expression changed drastically as he raised his sleeves and waved out a burst in order to sneak into the dark forces. Yiqing Luo's figure put in a lot of effort. She slowly raised her head. She could even act the role of a charming lady. Empty and cold, this acting without skill was comparable to those movie queens. Her pink lips trembled slightly. Luo couldn't help but praise herself. After a while, she spat out a hoarse but exceptionally cursing in her heart. Kill. Her face was still maintaining a crazy state. Yiqing Luo wasn't afraid of death as she faced the profounding chi of the Wolf Saint technique and once again attacked towards the direction of the Wolf Saint technique. He had indeed caught up. Damn Pharaoh he. Wolf Saint technique believes that Yiqing Luo has been controlled by She had already acted so well but quickly refused to show herself. Yiqing Qian saw that Yiqing Luo was about to rush over. Her eyes flashed into the dark rushed to the front of Wolf Saint Technique's wooden wheelchair. Perhaps the heavens had heard Wolf Saint Technique to block Yi Qing Luo's attack. Or perhaps Pharaoh, he had also sensed DMO Xian's blood spurted out from Yi Qing Qian's mouth. Just as DMO Xian's presence was getting closer, her body went limp as she fell into Wolf Saint Technique's arms. Only felt her body being sucked towards a direction by an extremely strong suction force. Expressionlessly. Her gaze filled with murderous intent. She was grabbed tightly by a strong palm. Kill. Her body stiffened as she approached Wolf Saint. She lingered around her nose. Wolf Saint Technique hugged the injured lady in his arms tightly. It was Pharaoh. His face ashen. Enough. You really pulled this slut over. I believe you. Wolf Saint Magic's tone didn't conceal his finger gesture and waved at Yi Qing Luo. All right, Pharaoh, he slanted a glance at him sarcastically. Yi Qing Luo's attack stopped like you would worry about this and that. She immediately turned around and walked to Pharaoh. Has never failed. She stood upright. The holy wolf technique was just the darkness sacred region. In his heart, do you still have any already believed it a little. Pharaoh, he moved his mouth and finally spat out a few secretly pleased. Let's go back. No problem, Pharaoh, no problem. Didn't continue arguing with Wolf Saint. I know that no one can surpass your secret skill. His fingers formed a hand seal as he swiftly recited a string of incantations. Between the two were about to ignite again. Yi Qing Luo's butterfly sacred technique she immediately stepped forward and patted Pharaoh his shoulder. She suddenly felt her body shaking violently. Pharaoh Crane's face was filled with pride after obtaining the goddess approval. When there was light again, Lang Xingfa's expression discovered that she was already at the entrance of a huge palace. He raised his eyes. At the entrance of the palace, sinister eyes two guards filled dressed in black cloaks immediately bowed respectfully. It was as if he wanted to teach Pharaoh a lesson. Pharaoh Butterfly Saint Technique had just returned to the dark forces old position in Wolf Saint Technique's heart. Pharaoh he casually threw the heavily injured Wolf Saint Law to the ground. She immediately pulled Pharaoh his arm and said softly, the two dark guards had long been accustomed to the open and secret fights between the Pharaoh and the elders. With the company of a goddess, one of them stepped forward and helped the wolf up. Naturally, Pharaoh Crane was overjoyed. Wolf Calling Saint out Law to was quickly carried away. He happily followed behind the Butterfly Saint Technique was dragged by Pharaoh as they walked directly into this luxurious palace. He lowered his head to look at the pale-faced woman lying feebly in his arms. As one of the four great pharaohs of the dark faction, Pharaoh was a vicious look in his eyes in the dark faction. His slender fingers clasped Yi Qing Qian's lower jaw tightly. Respectfully. In front of this no one even placed their sights on Yi Qing Luo. Some little tricks. After walking for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, they finally stopped in front of a courtyard. His eyes turned cold. Yi Qing Luo looked at the signboard on the courtyard. His fingers suddenly relaxed as he gently caressed her seductive face. Crane Palace. The vicious look in his eyes became extremely thick at this moment. In other words, but if you dare to use your own body as a bargaining chip to please me, Luo's vision had memorized all the details of the palace's surroundings into her mind. Perhaps it was because he was too confident in his secret technique. A sliver of disbelief surfaced on her pale face. At all. This sentence sounded like he was concerned about her little room in the Crane Palace, and couldn't bear for her to get injured tightly before leaving in a hurry. But Dark Forces territory, Yi Qing Luo didn't dare to let her guard down just because Pharaoh he had left. Along the way, knew if Pharaoh he was trying to test her robot state. Yi Qing Luo had been on high alert, maintaining the state of being controlled by his entire heart was placed on the Butterfly Saint Technique, so he had no time to bother about Yi Qing Luo. As for Butterfly Saint Technique, she was getting impatient from Pharaoh. He calculated the time in her heart, but on the surface, she still had to go along with a few sentences. She was slightly distracted and didn't pay much attention to Yi Qing Luo. She didn't know if it was because of the curse that Pharaoh he had set on the door. Heaved a sigh of relief. Not a single sound could be heard from the surroundings of this small room. He would eventually give himself away. The surrounding was so quiet that it was a little scary. Before reaching the dark sanctuary, she could not let anyone know that she was not in a blazing flame nest for this period of time. The place where the King of Darkness was already mentally exhausted. Girl, are you sure you really want to enter the darkness sacred region? Yi Qing Luo felt her eyelids getting heavier. Old Man Sung's voice was filled with worry. Not long after, she fell into a deep sleep. He knew that he had no way to persuade Yi Qing Luo to give up on this idea. After Yi Qing Luo fell into a deep sleep, it was just a few breaths' time. If something really happened, the tightly shut door slowly opening, there was no way to escape. The person who entered the room was an extremely beautiful spiritual body. So he could only wait anxiously in the azure fixed on the young lady's face who was sitting by the bed with her eyes closed. If only he knew that this girl was such a troublemaker. After seeing the young lady's stunning face, he should have exhausted everything to cultivate the lady's pupils shot out a biting cold hatred. Even if I don't go in, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave. Ah, die. Yi Qing Luo replied in her heart. Don't hurt my puppet. There was no turning back now that she had snuck into the underground forces. The beautiful lady. She had no other choice but to follow her original plan as he stared fiercely at the person at the door. languishful.
Her
It said that
original
this old
intention
man
was
to
to
take
take
the
the
opportunity to
opportunity not have
infiltrate
any
the Dark
problems.
Coalition and find out the
Why must you
location of the
waste
Dark
my knockout
Coalition's
drug?
base? You only
Now,
know how to be
there was a
suspicious
chance
all
to enter
day.
the darkness
No wonder
sanctuary.
you're unable to break through to the
It was
profound
even more
grade.
impossible for her to give
Wolf
up this
Saint
opportunity.
Magic sat on a wooden wheeled
The
chair,
King of
and behind
Darkness
him was a black
currently
robe,
sealed,
and he did not have any
looking
strength
Yi
left.
Qian.
If she were to
Wolf
do
Saint
something
Magic
to the
entered the
sanctuary
room
of
and his
darkness
gaze
and
fell
ruin
onto
the
Yi
King of Darkness
Luo.
plan to remove the seal,
After
it would
ascertaining
be a
that Yi
heavy blow to
Luo
the
had
dark
indeed
forces.
fallen into a deep sleep,
This darkness
Wolf Saint
sacred
Magic
region
then raised his malicious
naturally
eyes and looked
she
coldly
had to
at
go.
Pharaoh.
It's better
That
to be
place
safe
is
than
too
sorry.
dangerous.
It's because
I'm
of your
worried that
arrogance
based
that
on your
led to the
current
failure
strength,
of this
you
mission.
won't be able to handle it.
Isn't the failure all
Old Man
because of
Song
you?
naturally knew what Yi
Pharaoh
Luo
he
was
harumphed
planning.
coldly. If it wasn't
However,
for that troublemaker,
there was no such
how would
plan.
the spirit assimilation
There
array
was only
be
a
destroyed?
1% chance.
Yi Qian
If it
was
was really
criticized
that
and her
easy to
body
foil the
shrank
King of
slightly as
Darkness's
she
plan
lowered
to
her
remove
eyelids,
the seal,
not daring
then the
to
King
say a
of
word.
Darkness wouldn't be able to do
Wolf
so.
Saint Magic patted the
The
back
dark
of her
forces
hand
would
lightly
not
as
have
his
had the
gaze turned
chance to
cold.
turn things
the
around.
spirit assimilation array was
Yi
destroyed
Luo
because there's a
pursed her
problem
pink
with your
lips.
elder's ability.
Her slender
Just
fingers
when Yi
gently
Qian
rubbed
Luo
the profound
completely
phoenix
messed
ring
up
on
the
her
plan
fingertip.
which we had prepared for several
I'm not
months.
afraid.
I
You.
believe. Pharaoh he was
Qian will understand
exasperated.
what I mean.
He raised
Yi
his hand and was
Luo's
about
heart
to
felt
rush
a
forward
trace
to
of
beat the
warmth
wolf
when
she
she
thought of that
technique.
purple-robed man with
All
peerless
right.
elegance.
How old are the
She
two of
believed
you?
in the feelings between
Every
DMO
time you see
Qian
each
and
other,
her.
you won't let go.
Even if she said nothing.
Are we still going to talk about
DMO
business?
Qian would definitely
The
understand.
butterfly saintess couldn't take it anymore.
Ever since she was
She
young,
frowned and
she
her
had been
beautiful
brainwashed
face was
into
filled
thinking
with
that she could
annoyance.
only rely on herself
The
in this
butterfly
world.
sacred technique shook
She
off
couldn't
Pharaoh's
rely on
hand
anyone.
and walked out of the room while
Even
swaying
those
her
old
slender
men from the Yi
waist.
clan.
Even the
Pharaoh
old
he
man
fiercely
who taught
glared
her
at
all
Holy
kinds
Wolf,
of ultimate
then
skills.
immediately put on a smile
She
and
could
followed
not be
behind
relied
Holy
on.
Butterfly.
But,
Good,
to DMO
good,
Qian,
good.
she wanted to rely on
Dai.
him.
I won't argue with that
Stop,
old man.
Stop.
Let's talk business.
Old
Talk
Man
business.
Song helplessly shook his head.
Wolf Saint Technique, who was
This
still
old
in the
man
room,
is
narrowed
worried
his
about
malicious
you.
eyes as his gaze
I
stopped
don't want
on
to get dog
Luo
food
for
from
some
you.
time. The word
He then
dog
lightly
food.
patted her hand.
Old
Let's
Man
go.
Song had learned it from
Yi
Qian
Qian
responded obediently.
You are still a person controlled
As
by
she pushed the
pi.
Wolf Saint Technique
Don't
away,
show that kind of
Yi
smile.
Qian glanced sideways
If the
at
people
Yi
from the dark
Luo's
forces
direction.
see it, all your plans
In her
will
beautiful
be ruined.
eyes, there was a trace
Old
of
Man
hatred
Song
and
reminded
ruthlessness.
him.
Indeed,
She pushed the holy
now was
wolf
not
out
the
of the
time to
room.
show off their affection.
The door slowly closed
Yi
again.
Luo kept the emotions in,
room,
her heart as she
it was silent
refocused her
once
energy
again.
on the two people in front.
After a moment of silence,
Pharaoh he and Butterfly
the young
Saint
lady
Technique
who was
were still
originally
talking
leaning
about
against the
something.
side of the bed and in deep sleep, her eyelashes fluttered
Chapter
slightly.
1668.
Tightly, she opened her eyes.
After several twists and turns, they walked for more than
Chapter
an hour.
1661.
Pharaoh he finally stopped at an
Luo
extremely
herself was an
secluded back
alchemist.
mountain in the palace. She was extremely
Along the
sensitive
way,
towards
Yi
the smell of
Luo
medicinal
had already
herbs.
formed a map of the surrounding
the moment
terrain
the
in her
drowsiness
mind.
hit her. And this
Yi
secluded back
Luo
mountain
realized
could be
that
said.
someone had drugged her.
It was really secluded.
Hence, she beat them at their
If
own
it wasn't
game
for
and
the fact
pretended
that
to
she
fall
was following
asleep.
behind Pharaoh he.
From Wolf Saint Dharma
She
and
probably
Pharaoh
wouldn't
he's
even be
words.
able to find this place.
They must have something important
Even if
to
she
deal
found
with.
it, she would absolutely
Or perhaps
not
they
link
needed
the dark
to
sacred
discuss.
region with this secluded back
Otherwise,
mountain.
they wouldn't have gone
This
through
place
so much trouble
was
to drug
actually
her
the
who
dark
was already
sacred region where the
controlled by
King of
him.
Darkness was sealed.
There were at least 5
In order to
people who
conceal
entered
the dark
room.
sacred region,
The
she
dark
heard
forces
Wolf
are
Saint
really
Dharma
going
and
all
Pharaoh
out.
he's voices.
Old Man Song
And
was
one
extremely
butterfly
astonished.
Saint Dharma.
I didn't sense any
And
profound
one
Yi
Yi Qian
fluctuations in the surroundings.
And the last person.
The dark forces
Who
were able
was
to
he?
develop their forces till
From the
now,
start till
even
the
after
end,
the King of
that
Darkness
person had
was
not
sealed.
spoken a single word.
And to think of ways to
She
sneak
remained
into the
silent
Nirvana
for
realm.
some time as
This
she
is enough
sensed
that
that
there
there
wasn't
that
any
the dark
fluctuations
forces
are
are
not
surrounding
idiots.
air.
After
She
hearing
then
Old
quietly
Man
got
Song's
up and
words,
slowly walked to the
Yi
door.
Luo also understood
The
why
last
the dark
people to
forces
leave were
wanted to
Wolf
use
Saint
this
Dharma
desolate
and
back
Yi
mountain to
Qian.
conceal the dark sacred region.
There wasn't any incantation
If
on
the
this
dark
room
forces
door.
met with an ambush,
Yi Luo
even
easily
if the
opened
entire
the room
clan
door.
was annihilated,
What entered her eyes
at least
was
the
an
King of
extremely
Darkness
dark
was
long
still
corridor.
alive.
A few
As long as
voices
the
were
King
heard
of
from the
Darkness
next
was
room.
still alive.
Yi Luo
Once
looked
the seal
around to
was
ascertain
released,
that there wasn't anyone
their
guarding
dark
dark
long
forces
corridor.
would be able to step into development
She silently
once again,
recited the
stepping
secret
into
method
the
which
peak.
she had memorized in
You
her
also
heart.
know that they are not idiots,
Her figure
so you
flashed
better
in
be
a blink
careful.
of an eye.
If the dark
She had
forces
already
find
silently
out, I
appeared
won't
at
be
the
able
door
to
of the
save
next
you.
room.
Hearing
This was a
Yi-Ching
blink
Luo's
movement's
tone,
secret method.
it was still that relaxed.
It was extremely different
Old man
from her
Sung
own
sighed
footwork.
helplessly. Blink movement
Only this
secret
last
method
could
could
maintain
maintain
her
her composure
instantaneous movement
under the
were to
condition
danger.
of no aura fluctuation.
Ah, he, as a saint
and her
technique,
set of footwork
I don't have the
relied
right to
on
learn
one
the
word,
secret arts,
fast,
so I can only send you
the
here.
faster her footwork,
Butterfly
the more
saint
violent the
technique
turbulence
stopped in
the
her
air.
tracks as she smiled at
The group
Pharaoh.
of people in the next room were all
Pharaoh,
well-known
he grabbed
figures from the
Butterfly
dark
saint
forces.
technique's little hand as he
Any
smiled.
fluctuation
As
in the
long
air
as
was
Audiob
unable
wants,
to escape
I
their
can
senses.
teach you anything.
The
The
rules
Luo
set
didn't
by his
dare to
lordship
take the
can't be
risk.
broken.
Using
The
the
butterfly
blink
saint
movement
patted
secret
the
method,
back of his
as
hand
long as the
coquettishly,
timing was stable,
winked,
and
no
said
one would
angrily,
discover it.
"All right,
Hurry
then
up
no
and
one
lead
would
that little
discover
slut
it."
in.
Nearing
I
the
can't
door,
wait to see
she
that
could
little
clearly
slut
hear
become
Wolf's
food for the
Dharma's
Lord.
angry voice coming from the room.
Pharaoh, he took advantage of
He
butterfly
trashed
saint
this
technique's
plan was
words
planned
again.
by me and that Heavenly
At the same
Academy's
time,
trash director
he
2
hinted at
months
the
ago.
butterfly saint technique
For this
ambiguously.
plan, how much
He
manpower
walked
and
towards
resources have I
Luo
wasted?
and clasped her shoulders.
My Wolf Saint Dharma's forces
Luo
have been
was in
annihilated.
pain, but she forcefully
Wolf Saint
endured the
Dharma
intense
slammed
pain.
the table heavily.
Pharaoh, he
This
dragged
is a
him toward the
foolproof
deserted
plan.
back mountain.
If it succeeds,
As she stepped
we can
into the
escape
rear mountain,
completely.
Yiqing Luo clearly felt a
if it
cooling
wasn't for the
sensation
fact that your
brushing
elder's
past her
party was
cheeks
so
and body.
useless and couldn't even protect a
Yiqing
formation,
Luo acutely
would this plan
discovered
have
that when
failed?
Pharaoh he walked up the
Do
rear
you
mountain,
still want to push
his
all the
fingers
blame
had
to me?
already formed a hand seal.
Useless crane, let
This
me tell
is
you.
a barrier.
The failure of the plan is a problem of your elder
Yes,
society's
this kind
ability.
of barrier is different from the
It has
traditional
nothing to
barriers
do
that
with
you
me.
normally encounter.
Bang,
Bang,
Old Man Song
bang.
promptly explained.
There
This
was
is
the
a sound
kind
of
dark
things
barrier,
being rummaged
a
through.
reverse barrier.
Yiqing
Reverse
Luo
bounded
made use
domain.
of that explosion and her
What the
fingers
hell
moved
is this?
slightly
Barriers
opening
can
that
be
tightly
divided
shut
into
window.
several types.
Through the gap.
In other words, there is a reverse
Yiqing
barrier
Luo
set
saw
up in this
Pharaoh.
back
He
mountain.
overturned the table and pointed
If you don't
angrily
have
at
the
the Wolf
reverse
Saint
spirit
technique.
formation
This
secret
Pharaoh has
technique,
exhausted
you won't
all
be
my
blocked
energy
like
to
a
save you
traditional
from
spirit
Yiqing
formation
Luo's
when you
hands.
step into the back mountain.
Don't you dare to push all the blame for the failure
back
of the plan
mountain
on
that
this
you enter
Pharaoh.
is truly just a back
Lang
mountain.
Xingfa's face
If
instantly
you
turned
use the
ashen.
reverse spirit formation
His
secret
sinister
technique
eyes
to enter
stared
this back
coldly at
mountain,
Pharaoh.
you will arrive
his
at the
eyes
real
filled
hidden
with
place.
killing intent. Yiqing
Help.
Luo nodded her head in
This word
understanding.
completely provoked the Wolf
Looked
Saint
like
technique.
in order to enter the dark sacred
Especially
region,
to
she
save him
needed
from
to
that
know
slut
about this
Yiqing
reverse
Luo.
spirit formation secret
Wasn't
technique.
this indirectly saying that he
Then,
wasn't even
how should
comparable to that
Xian
silly
use the
lass
profound
Yiqing
phoenix
Luo?
ring to find her? Chapter 1669. She was forcefully dragged along by Pharaoh he for about 1 incense's time. Yiqing Luo felt that her shoulders were about to be torn apart. This old man was so gentle in front of the butterfly saint technique, like a little wolf dog trying to please her. Facing her, he was so crude, not knowing how to be protective of the fairer sex. At least, her looks were several streets ahead of the butterfly saint technique. At least, she was younger than the butterfly saint technique. Why did this old man have to target her? Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with grief and indignation. Under Pharaoh he's tugging, she entered the reverse enchantment, the real hidden place. The surroundings were strangely quiet. It was so quiet that only their footsteps could be heard. The surroundings were filled with a black fog, emitting a poisonous miasma. Between the breaths, there was an extremely thick smell of blood. The bright moon in the sky hung on the horizon, faintly discernible, but it wasn't clear. Instead, it added a strange atmosphere. Yiqing Luo's gaze finally landed on the front. That was the end of a path filled with black brambles. At the end, there was a majestic palace made of black jade stones. The palace was surrounded by 12 pillars, representing the 12 constellations. And every pillar was engraved with sealing runes. The runes on the pillars were emitting a smooth jade glow, suppressing the black fog in all directions. Other than the strange black brambles, there was not a single blade of grass around. The heavens and earth were silent, as though only Yiqing Luo and Pharaoh he were the only living people in this world. Yiqing Luo looked at the surrounding 12 pillars, then she looked at the palace in front of her. This was dark sacred region. The place where the king of darkness was sealed. When she saw this majestic palace, Pharaoh he's hand, which was pinching Yiqing Luo's shoulder, slowly slid down. The expression on his face became extremely respectful. His entire being became more solemn. He lifted his feet and walked towards the palace.
Yi Qing Luo followed closely behind. The two of them, one in front and one behind, followed the brambles on the ground, as they walked into the palace. A thick smell of blood assaulted their senses. It was so thick that it made them nauseous. The surrounding black fog and miasma also gradually dispersed. Pharaoh Crane did not feel the atmosphere in the palace at all. His expression was solemn, and his eyes were filled with respect. With an incomparably devout heart, he walked at the front step by step. The interior of the palace was extremely spacious. The first thing he saw was a huge circular altar. Below the altar was a huge pit that occupied 2/3 of the palace. The pit was covered with a thin layer of silk cloth. No, that was not silk. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she stared intently at that silk cloth. If she wasn't wrong, it should be the thin frost formed by the 10,000-year-old ice on the 10,000-year-old ice mountain in the north of the Nirvana realm. This thin frost had lasted for tens of thousands of years. It absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon. It never melts all year round. Yi Qing Luo had once heard that this 10,000-year-old cold ice had the ability to preserve corpses and prevent them from rotting forever. Who would have thought that the 10,000-year frost would be in the darkness sanctuary? What was covered by the thin frost? Yi Qing Luo wanted to take a closer look. Suddenly, he heard a loud thud beside his ear. Pharaoh he knelt down on the ground, facing that circular altar, as he knocked his head hard onto the ground. Lass, don't be in a daze, follow suit and kneel down. Old Man Tsang immediately reminded her in her mind. Kneel down. Make her kneel down in front of the King of Darkness. Looking at Pharaoh he's devout, kneeling back view, Yi Qing Luo's eyes gradually turned cold. This place. There was only Pharaoh he alone. The King of Darkness was in the seal. If she were to kill Pharaoh he now, then she would ruin the King of Darkness's plan to remove the seal. Chapter 1670. Just as Yi Qing Luo was thinking of a series of plans, suddenly, he heard an unfamiliar voice that sounded like rustling leaves. Did you fail? Yi Qing Luo felt a chill down her spine. This voice was just 3 simple words, but it made Yi Qing Luo feel a terrifying aura. Yi Qing Luo instinctively reacted. This voice, it was the voice of the King of Darkness. Other than the King of Darkness, there was no other presence in the dark sacred region. Wasn't the King of Darkness sealed? Why could he still speak? Had she guessed wrongly? How could that be the voice of the King of Darkness? Numerous thoughts filled her mind. The next moment, Pharaoh he had already used his actions to express everything. Pharaoh he respectfully knelt on the ground as his voice trembled. My lord, I'm sorry. It's my incompetence, to let a young lass destroy the spirit assimilation array. Indeed, that voice came from the King of Darkness. The person who was sealed could still speak. The King of Darkness is a being that roams above the lower realm and below the upper realm, not belonging to the 4 realms. Even if the King of Darkness is sealed, the consciousness of the King of Darkness still exists. Old Man Tsang's tone was extremely solemn and solemn. Lass, the power of the King of Darkness is far beyond your imagination. Even if the consciousness of the King of Darkness can't stay awake for too long, but, to deal with you, it's more than enough. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. In the darkness, there seemed to be a pair of icy cold eyes staring at her without blinking. A chill spread from her feet all the way to the top of her head. Her entire body seemed to have been frozen into an ice cube. She congealed her senses and tried her best to maintain her state of being under control. My lord, the reason for my failure is because of Yi Qing Luo that. Pharaoh he anxiously wanted to say that there might be someone from the lower realm behind Yi Qing Luo, helping her. But before he could finish his words, He was sent flying by a powerful force, crashing heavily onto the stone wall of the palace. With a dong, he rolled down from the stone wall. Pharaoh, he clutched his chest as he spat out a mouthful of blood. A failure is a failure. Don't try to find excuses for your failure. A cold and sinister voice rang out, carrying with it an obvious killing intent. Spare me, Lord. Spare me. I know I was wrong, I won't fail again. Ah. Pharaoh Crane's plea did not arouse the slightest bit of sympathy from the King of Darkness. That powerful force came wave after wave. It continuously swept up Pharaoh Crane's body. He was flung around in all directions. Under the punishment of the King of Darkness, several of Pharaoh's bones were broken, and blood was flowing out of his mouth. After an unknown period of time. Perhaps the King of Darkness was tired. Perhaps it was because he saw Pharaoh Crane lying on the ground on his last breath. He only needed one more strike to take Pharaoh Crane's life. The majestic aura that lingered in the surroundings suddenly dissipated. Yiqing Luo remained standing at the same spot, her body tensed up, totally unaffected by this imposing manner. The target was the King of Darkness. Pharaoh Crane was riddled with scars from the fall. He didn't dare to order Yiqing Luo to bear it for him. Yiqing Luo didn't hear old man Tsang's reminder. Pharaoh, he had used a secret art to control her. Chapter 1671. Pharaoh Crane's entire body was filled with an excruciating pain. His body felt as though it was being cut by numerous saw teeth. His face was pale as the pain continued to stimulate his consciousness. But he didn't dare to dodge or resist at all. Useless trash, what's the use of this king keeping a bunch of trash like you? King of Darkness's voice was hoarse as it was filled with a terrifying eeriness. Pharaoh Crane laid on the ground as he panted heavily. His face was filled with blood stains. His four limbs had lost the ability to move under King of Darkness's violent attacks. But when he heard King of Darkness's voice, Pharaoh Crane forced himself to hold on as he slowly shifted his body into a kneeling position. His voice was trembling as he opened his mouth in terror. Overlord. Overlord, please forgive me, although I failed in the mission of the spirit assimilation array, but I brought Yiqing Luo back. Saying that, he raised his head with difficulty as he looked at Yiqing Luo, who was standing stiffly by the side, not moving at all. For a long time, King of Darkness didn't say a word. It was just that the chill in the surroundings continued to spread. Even if it was Yiqing Luo, her skin had already started to break out with goosebumps under this chill. Finally, King of Darkness's voice rang, Yiqing Luo, that vessel. Yes, it's the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade's vessel. Pharaoh Crane immediately responded, as long as there's profound chi nurtured by the vessel, I can also speed up my lord's unsealing speed. Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Vessel. When Yiqing Luo heard Pharaoh Crane's words, her heart thumped extremely quickly. Could it be her heaven-defying Profound Heart Jade? What kind of Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade was it? And was this Profound Heart Jade's vessel? Using her own body to nurture this Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade's vessel. Why didn't she understand the meaning behind Pharaoh Crane's words? Ha! You bunch of trash do have some use. King of Darkness sneered softly. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt that there was a pair of icy cold, terrifying gaze falling onto her. She was unable to sense the exact direction of that gaze. Or perhaps she felt that there were people staring at her from all directions. That gaze was glued onto her. It made her have a nauseous impulse. Yiqing Luo knew. The King of Darkness was sizing her up. She couldn't move, her heart couldn't beat fast, and her breathing couldn't be rushed. The King of Darkness was not Pharaoh Crane. Any small problem could expose the fact that she was not being controlled by Tao Wu. What are you waiting for? Bring the container over to this king. Could it be that you want this king to do it himself? As soon as the King of Darkness's cold voice rang out, a loud sound rang out. Pharaoh he, who was kneeling on the ground, was once again sent flying backward. Pharaoh Crane rolled a few times on the ground. Enduring the intense pain, he stumbled and crawled towards Yi Ching Luo's direction. What are you waiting for? Go over to his lordship's side. Pharaoh he leaned close to Yi Ching Luo as he commanded in a low voice. Yi Ching Luo's body stiffened as she lifted her feet and walked towards that circular altar. Pharaoh Crane took the opportunity to chant a secret technique and performed a simple healing and pain relief on himself before catching up. The closer they got to the altar, the thicker the stench of blood permeated Yi Ching Luo's nose. The smell of blood. The smell was even more pungent and unpleasant than when she was in the flame lair and the ground was littered with corpses. Chapter 1672. My lord, the last time I obtained the divine phoenix profound heart jade, I could only use it to sense the location of the vast water divine weapon. This time, with this vessel, I will definitely be able to maximize the effects of the divine phoenix profound heart jade. Pharaoh Crane cautiously approached the altar, not forgetting to flatter it in a low voice. Have you found the whereabouts of the other azure water divine weapons? The King of Darkness scoffed. Pharaoh his face turned pale, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. How could he have forgotten? Even though he had obtained the divine phoenix profound heart jade, the azure dew ring was still taken away by Yi Ching Luo in the end. If it wasn't for his lord having foresight and letting him use a secret technique first to tamper with the profound heart jade, he wouldn't have been able to do so. I'm afraid. They totally had no idea how to deal with Yi Ching Luo. The dark forces were losing again and again. All of them had fallen onto Yi Ching Luo. He was still mentioning the vast water divine artifact. Wasn't that courting death? Pharaoh his body trembled, and his voice trembled as he said, My lord, don't worry. After this subordinate transmits the mystical energy within the vessel to my lord, I will immediately send the people of the Crane faction to search for the whereabouts of the other azure water divine weapons. If you're going to search for the whereabouts of the divine artifact, how is this vessel going to nurture the profound energy needed to break my seal? The King of Darkness sneered. Pharaoh Crane was drenched in cold sweat. Bean-sized beads of sweat dripped from his forehead. His body trembled in fear. Their conversation made Yi Ching Luo even more puzzled. Was it her profound heart jade, or the radar that was searching for the azure water divine weapon? She suddenly remembered that last time, in the tomb of the Ling King, the people from the dark forces had used her profound heart jade to open the barrier of the azure water ring. Her profound heart jade. Did it have any special connection to the azure water divine artifact? She remembered that the azure water ring seemed to be calling out to her at that time. It was as if the azure water ring was originally a divine tool that belonged to her. Why was the King of Darkness collecting the azure water divine weapon? Moreover, it seemed like he was determined to get it. To the dark forces, the azure water divine artifact, what kind of crucial role did it play? Cough cough, little girl, what you should be worried about right now isn't the matter of the vast water divine artifact. Old man Tsang reminded her helplessly. If your profound energy is completely sucked out by Pharaoh he and transferred to the seal of the sacred region, you will lose all your profound energy and become a cripple. Yi Ching Luo laughed secretly in her heart. Did you think that I would give Pharaoh he this chance? Are you going to use force? Old man Tsang hurriedly tried to dissuade him. This is the territory of the dark forces. If the King of Darkness knows that your profound heart jade isn't contaminated by the profound Yin Qi, you won't be able to leave the darkness sanctuary with your strength. The King of Darkness won't be able to remain conscious for long. Furthermore, he used up all his energy to punish Pharaoh he. How much energy does he have left? Yi Qing Luo asked calmly. She noticed. The King of Darkness was determined to kill Pharaoh He. However, when Pharaoh He said that she, as a vessel, should be transferred to the King of Darkness, she felt a chill run down her spine. The King of Darkness' killing intent had clearly weakened. The King of Darkness needed power. Even if it was sealed. He still needed power. Before entering the Darkness Sanctuary, the Butterfly Saint technique had mentioned that the King of Darkness would awaken for a short period of time. Short period of time, these two words meant that the time that the King of Darkness would be awake for wasn't considered long. Or rather, the reason why he could obtain a short period of consciousness. Chapter 1673. Which meant, even if Yi Qing Luo revealed that she wasn't contaminated, the King of Darkness couldn't do anything to her. Old Man Tsang was stunned as he burst out laughing. What a good lass, Luo, your thoughts are so meticulous. I finally understand the reason why you insist on following Pharaoh He into the dark sacred region. This lass. She would never do anything that she wasn't sure of. Even if she was in danger. She had already planned all her escape routes. She was indeed the owner of the Azure Dew bracelet. Just as Yi Qing Luo and Old Man Tsang were conversing, she and Pharaoh He were already standing on the altar. Pharaoh He looked at the stiff young lady who was standing in the middle of the altar. A sinister glint flashed past his eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that this young lady was the divine phoenix profound jade's vessel, he would definitely strangle her to death. Suppressing the hatred and anger towards Yi Qing Luo, Pharaoh He walked over to her. My lord, I will start the incantation now. Pharaoh He grabbed Yi Qing Luo's wrist and pressed her against the altar wall, which was filled with complicated patterns. Suddenly, a bone-piercing chill came from his back. A disgusting, indescribable feeling of disgust and fear surged up her heart. That was the feeling of the King of Darkness. On the wall of the altar. It was the place where the King of Darkness was sealed. This was the place where the King of Darkness was sealed. Pharaoh He raised her hand, and after pressing it against the wall, he pulled her other hand and pressed it against the wall. But when he pressed down on the other hand, suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Her body was like a broken kite as it flew out horizontally. He was flung out of the altar and landed on the ground. Yi Qing Luo used all her strength for this kick. That kick caused Pharaoh He's internal organs to feel like they had been shattered. His throat felt sweet as he spat out a mouthful of blood. You. Pharaoh He trembled as he raised his head to look at the altar. But he discovered that Yi Qing Luo was standing by the side of the altar, looking at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Pharaoh He's eyes were filled with shock. You. Don't you can't even speak properly, just save some energy. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she leapt down the altar. Then, he stomped on Pharaoh Crane's chest. Another mouthful of blood gushed out from Pharaoh Crane's mouth. It's fine if you can't speak. Whatever you want to ask, I'll answer it for you. Yi Qing Luo gave a light smile as she lowered her body slightly, looking down at Pharaoh He's face, which was filled with terror. You want to know why I attacked you, right? Pharaoh Crane's pupils constricted. The moment he got agitated, his internal organs tightened as well. It was so painful that he couldn't help but curl up and twitch. Pharaoh He, don't doubt your own secret arts. Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. I don't have the ability to break free from your secret arts control. Pharaoh Crane shook his head. If it wasn't for the fact that she had broken free from his secret technique, she would have died. How could Yi Qing Luo possibly regain her consciousness? Because, from the beginning to the end, I have never been controlled by you. Yi Qing Luo's fingers gently touched her chest. In my profound jade heart, I used the dark secret arts to hide the profound yin qi, just to wait for this moment. But unfortunately, your plan has failed once again. Pharaoh He's pupils suddenly widened. His eyes were filled with astonishment, as though he was surprised that Yi Qing Luo knew all these. Yi Qing Luo smiled like a flower. Pharaoh He's face was as white as paper. The atmosphere froze in an instant. Chapter 1674. Hearing King of Darkness's words, Yi Qing Luo turned her head and looked towards the altar, which was filled with patterns on the wall. Her pink lips rose slightly as she said in an evil and frivolous tone, "Then you have to come out from inside first." The surrounding mysterious yin qi, as well as the impending chill of a storm, suddenly deepened. King of Darkness was enraged. He was enraged. Yi Qing Luo smiled even more joyfully. Between her brows was a bright and enchanting smile. "King of Darkness, don't try to threaten me." Her voice was calm, without any fluctuation of emotions. "You who have been sealed. Your remaining energy is probably not enough to keep me in the dark sacred region." So confident. King of Darkness laughed coldly. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a sliver of arrogance. "Then why don't King of Darkness give it a try, to use your last bit of energy to test me? Or to stop me, to destroy your plan to remove the seal?" Silence made this treacherous atmosphere become more and more strange. King of Darkness didn't speak. Yi Qing Luo's heart slowly calmed down. Her guess was right. King of Darkness didn't have much energy left. She had this divine phoenix profound heart jade, so King of Darkness didn't dare to make a move easily. After all, King of Darkness didn't know much about her ability. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about King of Darkness's silence. She turned her head back as her lips curled into a smile. Her eyes were filled with a sharp glint as she fixed her gaze on Pharaoh He, who was lying on the ground, unable to move. "Pharaoh He, do you want to live on?" She smiled lightly as her tone was gentle. Pharaoh He's pupils contracted as he stared furiously at Yi Qing Luo. She smiled slightly. "Your life to me is not that important. If I want to strangle you, it's much easier than strangling an ant." Pharaoh He was so angry that his heart was in pain. His entire body trembled. His internal organs were trembling, as though they were being torn apart. "Answer my question obediently, and I guarantee that you will be safe." Out of the dark sacred region. Yi Qing Luo suddenly bent down as her slender fingers suddenly clasped onto Pharaoh He's neck. Her fingers tightened, the bones of her fingers were slender and distinct. Pharaoh He's pale face instantly turned purplish green. Pharaoh He's pupils dilated as he struggled to break free from Yi Qing Luo's fingers. But his body was riddled with wounds, and he didn't have the strength to struggle. "You don't want to die, right?" Yi Qing Luo could see the desire to live from Pharaoh He's eyes. He wanted to ask the King of Darkness for help. But he couldn't say a word. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she loosened the strength on his neck, as her other hand landed on his face, as she gently patted him. "It wasn't easy to get to where you are today. How would you bear to die so easily? Don't worry. As long as you answer my questions obediently, not only will I guarantee your safety, but I will also guarantee that you will obtain the sacred butterfly technique." He mentioned the butterfly saint technique. Pharaoh He's eyes flashed with a glint. Yi Qing Luo took a panoramic view of his emotional changes. Then, she continued, "Think about it. If I send you out and I stay in the darkness sanctuary to fight the King of Darkness, who will benefit in the end?" The glint in Pharaoh He's eyes grew brighter. If Yi Qing Luo and the King of Darkness were to fight, the current King of Darkness might not be Yi Qing Luo's match. If the King of Darkness was completely sealed, wouldn't the beneficiaries be the 4 great saint techniques and the 4 great pharaohs? By then, he would pretend to be under the King of Darkness's orders. He would control all the dark forces in his hands. Chapter 1675. This bottle of medicine can make the butterfly saint skill willingly to follow you. Yi Qing Luo touched the profound phoenix ring and took out a white jade bottle. Under this treacherous light, that white jade bottle shone with a dazzling luster. Pharaoh's gaze fell directly on the white jade bottle. He heard that Yi Qing Luo was an alchemist. It was extremely normal for Yi Qing Luo to be able to refine a pill that could make a lady willingly follow her. What do you want to know? Pharaoh, he finally surrendered. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly. What is the divine phoenix profound heart jade? What secret is hidden in this profound heart jade of mine? This. Pharaoh's face turned pale, as though he didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to ask this question. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Why? Not willing to say. No. Pharaoh, he hurriedly opened his mouth, his eyes filled with panic. But, this matter is extremely complicated. Maybe you don't understand. Yi Qing Luo continued to raise her brows as she softly hummed a note. But it made Pharaoh's scalp go numb. Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. It's. Pharaoh, he looked towards the altar in horror, only to discover that the King of Darkness didn't move at all. Then he looked at Yi Qing Luo's beautiful face with a light smile. He gritted his teeth and replied, Divine Phoenix profound heart jade is the most noble profound heart jade in this world. There is only one of it in this world. Most noble. How much is the difference between the purple grade profound heart jade and the profound heart jade behind you? Yi Qing Luo asked again. Purple grade profound heart jade. There's no comparison at all. This is only because you people from the lower realms think that the purple grade profound heart jade is the highest grade profound heart jade. In the upper realms, there are a lot of them. But the preciousness of the divine phoenix profound heart jade, even the strongest person in the god realm covets it. Yi Qing Luo remained silent for a moment. She had heard of the lower realms and the upper realms more than once. This nirvana realm was the lower realm. Then the upper realms. Was it referring to those legendary cultivators who were brought to a higher realm? He was worried that Yi Qing Luo wouldn't understand. Pharaoh, he explained in great detail once more. The upper realm was divided into 3 realms. In the lower realm, the upper realm was called the upper 3 realms. The upper 3 realms were divided into the earth realm, heaven realm, and God realm. The God world was the strongest plane of existence. Any random passerby there, if placed in the next plane, could set off a reign of terror and break the balance of the heavenly Tao. And the profound heart jade that even the strongest people in the God world coveted. It was clear how precious the divine phoenix profound heart jade was. After Yi Qing Luo heard all these, her heart was filled with astonishment. Her profound heart jade was actually so precious. It was no wonder that the King of Darkness had thought of all sorts of ways to dig away her profound heart jade. Then, what do you mean by vessel? Yi Qing Luo didn't forget how the King of Darkness addressed her. Pharaoh Crane was no longer as bashful as before, and answered straightforwardly. Not everyone can control the divine phoenix profound heart jade. Once an ordinary profound heart jade is dug out, a profound practitioner can absorb its profound energy. But the divine phoenix heart jade was different. When we obtain the divine phoenix profound heart jade, we can't even unleash 1% of its power. And you are the divine phoenix profound heart jade's vessel, the energy absorber. Only your body can nurture the divine phoenix profound heart jade, and from there, produce an endless supply of profound energy. It was indeed like this. Chapter 1676. since transmigrating till now. Yi Qing Luo had a question in her heart. But this question, the people from the Yi family would definitely not give her an answer. As the young matriarch of Three Springs sect, she had an enviable profound jade heart. Why was it that she was trash without any profound chi? And after she transmigrated to this continent, she used the dragon god cauldron to refine the marrow cleansing pill, which changed this body's physique. Then, if her profound jade heart was the divine phoenix profound jade heart, why couldn't her original body cultivate? Then how could it give birth to an endless stream of profound chi? Yi Qing Luo. You can rest assured, although the divine phoenix profound jade heart is something everyone in the upper realm wants, but other than you, no one else can bring out the effect of the divine phoenix profound jade heart. Seeing that Yi Qing Luo didn't speak, Pharaoh he thought that she was worried that her divine phoenix profound jade heart would be discovered by the people from the upper realm. Anne, your current strength is not enough to bring out the maximum power of the divine phoenix profound jade heart. The people from the upper realm will not find out about the birth of the divine phoenix profound jade heart. Then how did you know? Yi Qing Luo smiled faintly. The ridiculousness of the cold glare made Pharaoh he tremble. This is what his lordship said, we are only following orders. Pharaoh he was so scared that his face turned pale as he hurriedly replied. King of Darkness. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes and glanced at the seal on the altar. A trace of suspicion flashed past her eyes. But she didn't continue to investigate. Instead, her lips curled as she looked at Pharaoh he with a light smile. What do you want to use my profound jade heart to collect the azure water divine weapon for? Pharaoh he's pupils contracted continuously. For a long time, he couldn't open his mouth to answer. Obviously, Yi Qing Luo's question touched the scope of his resistance. But the more Pharaoh he refused to answer the question, the more Yi Qing Luo wanted to know. What was the use of the azure water divine weapon to the dark forces? Pharaoh he cared so much about the azure water divine weapon. What secret was the azure water divine weapon hiding? Yi Qing Luo's fingertips drew out a sharp dagger from the fan handle. She bent down and placed the cold dagger on Pharaoh he's face. She smiled and said in a gentle tone, Pharaoh Crane, I'm not a very patient person. If you insist on wasting your time here, my dagger will not have eyes. Pharaoh he's face turned even paler. He tensed his body, trying to avoid the dagger in Yi Qing Luo's hand. But when he moved, the sharp blade pierced into the skin on his face. A streak of blood oozed out from his face. A piercing pain caused Pharaoh he's hair to stand on end. He knew that Yi Qing Luo wasn't joking. If he continued to hesitate, the next place that Yi Qing Luo's dagger would slash open would be his neck. Pharaoh Crane's entire body was trembling. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or fear. It was only at the last moment when Yi Qing Luo impatiently moved her dagger. He gritted his teeth and squeezed each word out from between his teeth. The azure water divine weapon is the highest position in the upper realms, God realms Lord God Emperor's personal accessory 10,000 years ago and is tainted with Lord God Emperor's power. Rumors say that Lord God Emperor passed away 10,000 years ago and was buried in the God Emperor's tomb. And the azure water divine weapon is the guide to find the God Emperor's tomb. Speaking of this, Pharaoh he's voice paused for a moment. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed. What motive does the dark forces have to find the God Emperor's tomb? Yi Qing Luo half squatted down as she leaned close to Pharaoh he's ear and laughed lightly. Haven't I said it before? I will fight to the death with the King of Darkness, and you will be the one who benefits in the end. Isn't that a win-win situation? In other words, this is the way to seal the King of Darkness. Tell her. She had completely sealed the King of Darkness. As for Pharaoh he, after leaving the sanctuary of darkness, he became the leader of the dark forces. This was a blatant temptation. Pharaoh Crane was silent. Yiqing Luo picked up the white jade bottle and shook it in front of his eyes. Her eyes squinted slightly as traces of craftiness swirled around. Of course, if you insist on protecting the King of Darkness's secret, and wholeheartedly die, I can fulfill your wish. Coercion and temptation, using both methods at the same time. Pharaoh, he finally compromised. He clenched his fists tightly, as he had no strength to resist and could only obey. Chapter 1678. Runes on the Wall. Yiqing Luo straightened her body as she looked towards the altar. That wall, which was filled with complicated patterns, was emitting a dense cold aura. Earlier when Pharaoh he had pinned her on that wall. Yiqing Luo could obviously feel the touch of the King of Darkness who was sealed behind the wall. That wall. It was indeed the place where the King of Darkness was sealed. Pharaoh he, after I seal the King of Darkness completely, I will not forget about your benefits. Yiqing Luo turned her head as she revealed a radiant smile. Following that, she turned around and with a leap, she leapt onto the altar and headed straight towards that wall which was filled with runes. Her slender figure, under the dim and treacherous light, showed her oppressive aura. Pharaoh he laid on the ground as a sharp glint flashed past his eyes. Yiqing Luo's back was facing him so he couldn't see her expression. But he could guess. Yiqing Luo must be extremely delighted. Then let's be delighted. Let's see who can laugh till the end. Yiqing Luo's footsteps were light as though she was extremely happy. She squinted her eyes as an undetectable glint flashed past her eyes. She swept a glance at the surroundings. The circular altar was extremely spacious. In front of the seal array on the rune wall, a few burning lamps were placed. A palm-sized oil lamp was burning with a weak flame. The runes on the wall shone even more strangely. Could the King of Darkness have exhausted his energy and been sealed again? Yiqing Luo muttered softly as she stared at the rune array. Following that, she turned her head as her eyes were filled with joy. Pharaoh he, what should I do to destroy this seal array? Use your divine phoenix profound jade heart's energy to unleash your profound energy to the maximum and destroy the seal array along with the altar. Pharaoh he replied extremely quickly, this time without any hesitation. Yiqing Luo nodded her head in understanding. Following that, she walked straight towards the rune seal array. She shut her eyes as she activated the profound jade heart's energy. A powerful and terrifying profound energy fluctuation started from her feet as it spread outwards. The profound jade heart's energy was completely unleashed. Yiqing Luo opened her eyes. An enchanting red glow flashed past her eyes. She raised her palm and filled it with dark force. Slowly, that palm descended. Pharaoh Crane looked at Yiqing Luo's actions nervously. His sinister eyes were filled with ecstasy. Because of his excitement, his severely injured body was thrown to the back of his mind. When this palm landed, as long as this palm strike landed, Yiqing Luo was completely finished. She would completely become a tool for the dark forces to generate qi. Swish, 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 just as Pharaoh Crane was filled with excitement, a few inexplicable voices could be heard in the air. On the altar, the aura of the woman who was releasing dense Xian qi had suddenly decreased. His palms were filled with dark force and turned into a hurricane. The hurricane swept up the oil lamps in front of the ceiling array in an instant. The weak burning light was instantly extinguished. The moment the lights were turned on, Pharaoh he's face instantly turned pale. He staggered back a few steps. He wasn't able to stand properly as he fell heavily onto the ground. His face was filled with astonishment as he looked in disbelief at the young lady who had retracted her palm wind. His heart instantly sank to the bottom.
Chapter 1679. You. Pharaoh. He was so infuriated that he was trembling. His throat was filled with a fishy taste as he spat out a mouthful of blood. If you said that Yi Ching Luo was really innocent and accidentally extinguished those few oil lamps, he wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. He had underestimated this wretched lass's ability. Underestimated this wretched lass's intelligence. Yi Ching Luo seemed as though she didn't see Pharaoh. He spitting out blood as she innocently blinked her eyes. Why not? I try again. This time, I will definitely be able to destroy the altar and the ceiling array. Saying that, she had a sweet smile on her face as she flipped her palms. The glower flame fan suddenly opened up. The young lady's slender figure was like a rose blooming in the dark night. The red feather fan in her hands created numerous whirlwinds of sharp blades. In a few breaths' time, the sharp blades shot out. In front of the ceiling formation, the few remaining oil lamps were sliced into several pieces with a crackling sound. The light stopped burning. There was no longer any oil lamp burning. Yi Ching Luo sighed with a helpless look. Why is my profound chi becoming more and more disobedient? I have to try again, try again. Her words had yet to finish. An angry and irritated voice suddenly rang out, "Vessel, stop it at once." Immediately following that rune wall shot out in extremely chilly imposing manner, directly striking towards Yi Ching Luo's face. Yi Ching Luo's fingertips flicked. The glower flame fan easily split apart that aura. Following that, her figure speedily retreated a few steps. Her lips curled upwards as she smiled sweetly, unable to hold it in so quickly. A raging chilly aura swept across the entire dark sacred region. It indicated the King of Darkness's raging emotions. Yi Ching Luo's smile grew as she retreated to Pharaoh. He sighed without a single trace of fear on her face. You, how did you know? How did you know? Pharaoh. He was completely in a panic. He sat on the ground helplessly as he looked at Yi Ching Luo with a face full of terror. He couldn't believe that Yi Ching Luo actually knew about his and his lord's plan, knew that the most important thing in his lord's altar was those few spirit lamps which looked like oil lamps. Do you think that I will believe your nonsense? Yi Ching Luo chuckled as she looked at Pharaoh. He as though she was looking at a fool. Impossible, clearly you. Pharaoh. He could not figure out which step had gone wrong. The questions you answered were half true and half false. I have my own ways to differentiate. Yi Ching Luo's lips curled upwards. She was obviously smiling, but it looked extremely horrifying. Impossible. Impossible. Pharaoh Crane shook his head. The line of defense in his heart had completely collapsed. From the moment you answered the second question, I started to suspect you. It was impossible for the King of Darkness to fall into a deep slumber because of the seal. Pharaoh Crane's fearful expression, as well as the fact that he was too frightened to answer every single question she asked, only to be able to answer fluently in the end. It made Yi Ching Luo develop suspicions towards him. He was afraid that the King of Darkness wasn't asleep at all. But through the dark secret arts, Yi Ching Luo and Pharaoh he were communicating telepathically. The questions that Pharaoh Crane answered were all questions that the King of Darkness had agreed to. The King of Darkness had been sealed for 10,000 years, so if it wasn't through you guys, how would he know about the matters in the outside world? How did the King of Darkness find out that I have the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade? Pharaoh why don't you save your effort to play your little tricks in front of me? Yi Ching Luo looked at the fearful Pharaoh with interest. Her words weren't just for Pharaoh to hear. But Chapter 1680. Yi Ching Luo really wanted to roast what was in Pharaoh Crane's brain. Not long ago, the few of them and Shi Shanglan were discussing. Was there someone from the lower realm behind her? Pharaoh quickly threw this suspicion to the back of his mind.
The King of Darkness wanted to use Pharaoh Crane's mouth to get her to help him break the seal. She didn't even think that inside her azure dew bracelet lived an old man who knew the heavens above and the earth below. How could Old Man Song not know how to break and destroy the Saint Realm seal? When Pharaoh he told her to release all the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade and destroy the altar. Old Man Song had already spoken out to stop her. Of course, even if Old Man Song didn't say anything to stop him, it was impossible for her to be obedient. She was not stupid. If he destroyed the altar, wouldn't he be helping the King of Darkness remove his seal? It was precisely because of Pharaoh he's words. This made Yi Qing Luo raise her guard completely. From this, she concluded that the King of Darkness did not fall into a deep slumber. Instead, he wanted to use her divine phoenix profound heart jade to forcefully break the seal. Even though her current strength was not enough to completely remove the Saint Realm seal. But at the very least, it could speed up the process of removing the King of Darkness seal. In Old Man Song's words. Which was to say, as long as Yi Qing Luo really followed Pharaoh his method and destroyed the altar. It was equivalent to Yi Qing Luo destroying the spirit assimilation array in the blazing cavern, all in vain. From Old Man Song's mouth, Yi Qing Luo found out that the oil lamps in front of the sealing array was the key to the King of Darkness's temporary awakening. If she directly stepped forward and wanted to forcibly extinguish those burning lamps, she would have already been killed. The King of Darkness would never give her the chance to do so. The King of Darkness wanted to use her. Then, she decided to beat him at his own game and pretended to believe Pharaoh his words. She approached the lamps and extinguished them. Those oil lamps were known as soul lamps. As the name suggested, it was a lamp that gathered souls. As the lamp burned, the soul would not be extinguished. It was these few soul lamps that allowed the King of Darkness to have the ability to devour souls even when he was sealed in the Saint Domain. Destroyed the soul lamp. The soul was interrupted. The source of the King of Darkness power would also be cut off. Thinking of this, Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curved upwards as the ridicule in her eyes deepened. It was indeed the right choice for her to infiltrate the dark forces and enter the darkness sanctuary. As long as the King of Darkness was heavily injured, no matter how powerful the dark forces were, they would not be able to do anything big for a long time. And during this period of time, it was enough for her to grow to the point where she could rival the King of Darkness. She, Yi Qing Luo, had this confidence. You slut! How dare! How dare! Pharaoh he looked at the beautiful face in front of him, and his eyes widened in horror. He and his lord had fallen into this bitch's trap. The soul lamp had been destroyed. How could the lord wake up? Pharaoh he wanted to gather his mental power and cast a hex. But he had just condensed his mental energy. A tingling sensation quickly spread from the center of his head. His entire head felt like it was being torn apart. Pharaoh Crane fell to the ground in pain. He raised his head and smashed it against the ground. This kind of pain made it impossible for him to concentrate. Chapter 1681. Pharaoh his gaze fell onto the white jade bottle. His expression turned steely green as he roared furiously, "What have you done to me? You, how dare you?" Wasn't the white jade bottle in Yi Qing Luo's hands the one which she used to bluff Pharaoh he, saying that it would make the butterfly saint technique follow him willingly? It was targeted at him, a poison which restrained his concentration. Pharaoh he was furious and annoyed, but most of it was fear and astonishment. The young lady in front of him. She was just 15 years old. But she had such a scheming mind. Her thoughts were meticulous and every step was calculated. Even for an old man like him who had lived for more than half of his life, fighting openly and covertly all the way to his current position, he was totally unable to see through what she was thinking. If Right from the start, he had sincerely cooperated with Yiqing Luo. Would the ending be different? This young lady, perhaps she really had the ability to destroy the dark forces. Only, there were no ifs. Yiqing Luo would not give him a chance to regret. She smiled as she twisted open the white jade bottle's cap. The white medicinal powder was sprinkled onto Pharaoh He's body. When the medicinal powder came into contact with Pharaoh He's body, Pharaoh He only felt that his entire body was filled with the same kind of piercing pain earlier. Densely, it attacked his entire body. He howled in pain. His body twisted into an extremely strange arc on the ground. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change as she flicked her finger and the white jade bottle landed on the ground. She calmly raised her eyes and looked towards the altar. Losing the illumination of the soul lamp, the entire dark sacred region only had one hanging luminous pearl. The light was extremely weak. As the surrounding sinister cold wind blew, with a thick stench of blood, it filled the air. It made the atmosphere of the dark sacred region even more sinister. A gust of chilly wind blew past in waves. Yiqing Luo remained unmoved. Instead, it passed by the extremely twisted and stiff corpse on the ground due to the pain, and headed straight towards the direction of the silk cloth which was covered with a thin layer of frost for thousands of years. The air was filled with the stench of blood once again. King of Darkness's hoarse roar rang beside her ears. "Vessel, stop. Stop right there for this king." A surge of energy came from all directions. It enveloped Yiqing Luo's body in that surge of energy. A cold and gloomy aura. This made Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly. "Don't touch me." These three peaceful words came out from Yiqing Luo's mouth. Beneath her feet, the profound chi fluctuated and rolled up streams of energy. Countless streams of air revolved around the sole of her feet, entangling together. Bang! The force from the King of Darkness collided with the airflow around Yiqing Luo's feet. The air in the entire Darkness Saint realm suddenly shook violently. At the same time, in Yiqing Luo's hand, a soul lamp which had already been extinguished appeared. When the King of Darkness saw the soul lamp in her hand, his voice became even more irritated. "Vessel! If you dare to do this, this king will make you regret it. I'll make you regret it." His voice was already in a hysterical state. The restlessness of the King of Darkness caused the cold in the air to turn into ice. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? This vessel had repeatedly sabotaged his awakening plan and his plan to remove the seal on the Saint realm. Now, he wanted to completely destroy him. How could he tolerate this? He was the King of Darkness, the king of all living things in the world. Between heaven and earth, all living things had to respect him as the king. However, the commotion in the air was unable to disturb Yiqing Luo's emotions. Her expression was calm as she threw the soul lamp in her hand towards the thin layer of frost. An intense explosion was heard. Chapter 1682. Ah, slut! Slut! Furious roars filled the entire dark sacred region. The dark sacred region was in a state of turbulence. The surrounding air seemed to have been frozen by the profound yin qi at this moment. In the air, streams of profound yin qi continued to revolve and spread in all directions. Yiqing Luo's breathing started to become laborious. The King of Darkness was enraged. Completely enraged. Yiqing Luo slowed down her breathing as she squinted her eyes as she gazed at the profound yin qi which was revolving around her. On the contrary, she revealed a, as expected, smile. The angrier the King of Darkness was, the more furious he got. Which meant that her action of breaking the 10,000 years thin frost was a huge blow to the King of Darkness. Yiqing Luo's vision fell onto the 10,000 years thin frost which was filled with tiny cracks. She took a step forward. Another spirit lamp was thrown out from her hand. Just a light toss. That palm-sized spirit lamp landed right in the middle of the thin frost. A "Kacha" sound was heard. The 10,000 years thin frost suddenly broke apart. The deep pit which occupied 2/3 of the dark sacred region was completely presented in front of Yiching Luo. That was a blood pool. A blood pool which emitted a thick stench of blood. What was even more horrifying was that huge blood pool was soaked with corpses. On top of each corpse floated a layer of fist-sized transparent air bubble. At the moment when the 10,000 years thin frost broke apart, those transparent air bubbles immediately left the corpses' heads as they swarmed out. Transparent air bubbles, in a split second, enveloped the entire roof of the dark sacred region. One layer after another. It was densely packed and just one look at it made one's hair stand on end. There were at least tens of thousands of transparent air bubbles. And at the same time when the air bubbles left the corpses in the blood pool suddenly melted into a pool of blood. In just a short moment, the corpses in the blood pool had already disappeared. And the blood in the blood pool had obviously spread upwards. This scene made even Yiching Luo's scalp go numb. She raised her head and looked at the layers of densely packed transparent air bubbles which were suspended above the roof as she was filled with puzzlement. Those are the souls of those profounders. Old Man Tsang voiced out in time to dispel Yiching Luo's doubts. Soul. Are those transparent bubbles souls? These souls should be the sacrifices that the dark faction prepared for the King of Darkness. Use dark spells to extract the souls of the boys and girls, then seal their bodies and souls in the blood pool with 10,000-year frost. You used your soul lamp to shatter the 10,000-year thin frost, and the souls of these profound practitioners escaped. As Yiching Luo listened, the coldness in her eyes grew increasingly stern. The underworld organization was truly ruthless. Who would have thought that they would use such a method to store the offerings for the King of Darkness? It was too cruel. These souls, they were all sacrifices for the King of Darkness, a source of food. It was no wonder that the King of Darkness was so furious when she destroyed the 10,000-year-old thin frost. She wanted to destroy the hope of the King of Darkness awakening. He wanted to destroy the King of Darkness's hopes of breaking the seal. She wanted to seal the King of Darkness completely. Yiching Luo's eyes turned cold as her figure suddenly swayed. She was already standing at the entrance of the dark sacred region's palace. She recalled the method that Pharaoh he used to open the palace door. Stop. You stop right now. Following the hysteria of the King of Darkness, the profound yin qi in the huge palace caused the surrounding air to turn even colder. Chapter 1683. The violent profound yin qi seemed to have the power to swallow the heaven and earth. Yiching Luo's body was unavoidably affected by the profound yin qi. Her expression didn't fluctuate at all. However, astonishment surged up from the bottom of his heart. The King of Darkness was very powerful, much more powerful than the Nirvana realm. Yiching Luo was very clear about this. It was rumored that 10,000 years ago, the upper realm's power was used to seal the King of Darkness in the dark sacred region. That was enough to show how powerful the King of Darkness was. Even now, he who was sealed in the dark sacred region. The power that was released was not even a 10,000th of what he had at his peak. But it was this 10,000th. Yiching Luo felt an extremely strong pressure, covering the sky and covering the earth. The violent profound yin qi kept attacking her. Yiching Luo's robe kept fluttering. A strong airflow lingered around Yiching Luo's body, forming into a ball shape. In her mind, Old Man Tsang's panicked voice rang, "Not good, lass. The King of Darkness is enraged. Quickly use teleportation to leave this place." At this moment,
Old man Song couldn't be bothered anymore. As long as Yi Qing Luo could survive. Even if the secret of the Azure Dew bracelet was known by others. It didn't matter. He absolutely could not let anything happen to Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's heart trembled when she heard that. She didn't expect old man Song to even mention teleportation. From this, one could see how dangerous the King of Darkness's furious attack was. But, she couldn't use teleportation. She couldn't escape just like that. The King of Darkness's attack seemed to be aimed at her. But in actual fact, the King of Darkness's bigger target was those 10,000 transparent soul bubbles floating above the roof. Old man Song had explained it to her before. These souls had all been sealed into bubbles using dark spells. Once, these transparent bubbles left the dark sacred region and floated towards the place where the souls were controlled. By then, the upper realm would discover the dark spells on these souls. And once the number of these souls increased, the people from the upper realm would definitely pay attention to this matter. The dark forces were preparing to rise again and take action against the Nirvana realm. Once the news spread to the upper realm would definitely maintain the balance and lend a helping hand. She wanted to release these souls from the darkness sanctum. The King of Darkness would do everything in his power to stop him. If she escaped, it wasn't just the secret of teleportation that the King of Darkness would know. These souls would also be destroyed by the King of Darkness. These souls were the evidence of the evil deeds of the underworld organization. Yi Qing Luo absolutely would not allow the King of Darkness to destroy this evidence. Her charming eyes were covered with a thin layer of coldness. Yi Qing Luo concentrated, the power of her profound jade heart rose to the extreme. Then, the powerful profound qi poured down like a rainbow. The glowing flame fan in his hand also unfurled, turning into a devilish red glow. Bang! The palace gate of the darkness sanctuary was split open by the red light. At the same time, Yi Qing Luo's body, which was encircled by the profound yin qi, suddenly exploded. Girl Luo! Old Song's voice was hoarse as he angrily roared from within the Azure Dew bracelet. His heart was beating rapidly, unable to restrain itself. That girl actually, he actually chose to take on the King of Darkness attack just to release those souls. What on earth was she doing? Old man Song wanted to use his vision to investigate the situation outside. But no matter how he looked, it was all white in front of him. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.